Welcome to Proptech Pulse, the podcast that takes the pulse of prop technology in multifamily. I'm your host, Shelley Robinson, and each week we'll be diving deep into innovations, challenges, and the future of work in property technology and multifamily. From AI-driven property management to blockchain and real estate, we're here to explore how technology is reshaping the way we live, work, and invest in multifamily communities. Whether you're a property manager, a tech entrepreneur, an executive, or even simply curious about the future of living spaces, Proptech Pulse is your weekly dose of insights and inspiration. So let's sync our rhythms and get on with the show. It's time to take the pulse. Good morning and welcome to the podcast. Today we have Kevin Donnelly and Lori Reeves with RETC. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shelley. Good to be here.
I've been looking forward to chatting with the both of you and really love the work that you're doing. And before we get started, I just wanted to tell the listeners and viewers today to stick around until the end because based on what you've told me, you have an important announcement to make at the end as well.
That's great. Yep.
All right. Well, to kick it off, why don't both of you kind of share your story of what's brought you to this point in your career journeys and RETC today?
Sure. I'll kick off and just say again, thanks for having us today. It's great to be with you and your viewers. I've been in the industry for quite a while. I've been at NMHC and now RETC for just over a decade. Really cut my teeth in multifamily and real estate here in Washington, more focused in the advocacy space. So after a significant number of years on Capitol Hill, went to work in the single family space at the National Association of Realtors, then over to NMHC with multifamily, which really broadened my perspective, you can imagine. And I think in both of those places, I was fortunate enough to have technology always be a core part of the work I was doing, the portfolio from a public policy standpoint. And the beauty of NMHC is that I was able to sit, I guess, better to say it this way, sit at the intersection of both policy and industry practice. So I got to interact with industry professionals navigating, emerging tech and, operational challenges, and then really look at it from public policy standpoint where we see, whether it's data security and privacy, and we can get into more of this, just policymakers not really understanding the underlying tech and, me sitting sort of at this unique intersection to be able to translate to both sides. And I think as time went on, we saw technology become a bigger and bigger part of NMHC's portfolio. And then certainly the industry, while we were always coined as slow adopters of tech, I think that's changed in a lot of ways. I think still does get hung around our necks, but I think by and large, we have met the moment. We're moving so quickly and so fast in so many different areas of tech that really, I think NMHC's legacy in tech policy and our work at Proptech and bringing, leaders together really called for the industry, NMHC's leadership to embark on this new adventure, which was creating a new dedicated home for all things technology and multifamily. And that is where we find ourselves today at the Real Estate Technology and Transformation Center.
I love it. Yeah. How about you, Lori?
Well, I like to call myself an industry veteran because I've been in this industry my whole career, really. Yeah, 30 plus years in multifamily and in tech. I mean, it started with getting the first PC and somebody had to read the manual and figure it out kind of thing. And before I knew it, I went from marketing to IT. So, I've seen the journey our industry has taken in technology. I think I've done just about every line of housing there is to do and every kind of technology there is to implement, manage, whatever. So I've always been involved on the technology side. And then, the great company I was with, Forest City, no longer exists. And so, went a couple places here and there after that, but I found my home almost 2 years ago now. Back at working on industry. take two. But I found my home really with at NMHC as a consultant, and then when RETC was formed. So I worked with them to build the business plan to create this organization where we could focus more on tech and the promises and the challenges that go along with it. And so having a great time here working with the RETC team.
I really enjoyed the predominant positioning of RETC at NMHC in January when I attended the meeting, and the collaboration on the panels and things there. I love the work that y'all are doing, which kind of leads me into my next set of questions, and I call them kind of future in a bottle questions, which affects policy, which affects technology and operations, kind of crosses across all of it. What are the top 3 things you see changing in prop technology and policy in the next 5 years, and why?
Well, I think it's so hard to answer that question and be taken seriously. If you look at our conversation 5 years from now, and I guarantee my 3 will be very wrong. But I think from this vantage point, or from this perch where we sit, I think the industry, like the broader public, has been so focused on artificial intelligence. And if, I always remind folks that, 5 or 6 years ago, all the buzz was blockchain, right? And, we were all psyched and really had to get smart quick on blockchain. I think AI is obviously a little different, but I think it's just the industry's, and I sort of hit on this in our intro, the industry's willingness now to play and to be experimental and be more willing to take on technology risk because of the huge upside that it has in so many different areas. So I always, when people talk to us about AI, I broaden it to really focus on emerging tech. It's not just artificial intelligence. It's really where we're going as a movement. I think, the second big pillar really is for me, and given my advocacy hook and the work we do at RETC, is in the public policy space. I think we find ourselves at a moment where housing policy, housing affordability continues to be a national conversation. And never before has it been a kitchen table issue in communities across the country of all types. What was once an urban problem is now a problem in every community, whether it's suburban, mountainous, rural, you pick it. And I think we have this unique moment in time where bipartisan members of Congress, bipartisan city legislators are looking for real solutions. And I think those of us in the technology space, those of us who have been like yourself and Lori, who have been drivers of this conversation for decades, need to realize like the work that has been done, the road that has been paved to meet this moment is been incredible. And I think we have a real opportunity to move the needle for the nation on addressing these housing challenges. And I think when you zoom out, our job as an industry, and certainly RETC's core, is going to be informing and educating policymakers about those opportunities and to really push them to avoid over-regulating and stifling innovation in an attempt to protect consumers, or an attempt to, or I would say, legislate out of fear instead of out of knowledge. And I think that's where we're really pushing them. And I think the third piece is, where we will be is we're going to make mistakes. We're going to slip up, but we have to be willing to try. And I think that's where another core part of RETC is the community. It's the collaboration. It's the peer-to-peer exchange, leaning on each other, for that on the ground insight. What isn't working? What is working? How did you approach this? Really problem solving as the core of our role in the technology space. I think those are probably the 3 areas where I see, that we'll succeed if we do it well.
It gets complex, across ownership, operations, technology, and then what you were talking about, policy, and working with, the government to kind of make sure all of that works together. Are there kind of any themes around that right now? in kind of removing any of that complexity that y'all are focused on?
Well, I think, Lori, this is actually probably a great segue to some of the work we've been doing on fee transparency. A lot of these consumer issues, we at RETC strongly believe are legitimate. Technology has completely upended society in many ways, and I would argue in the majority of the ways, in very positive ways, having a really positive impact. But we do need, and we have strong consumer protections and guardrails in place, like the Fair Housing Act or the Fair Credit Reporting Act. But we all know that collectively we can and should do better in certain areas. And I think that's where we're looking at data as an evolving field that can be leveraged for good, just like broader tech. So, Lori, I'll kick it over to you on some of the work we're doing on MITs.
Sure. I'd love to talk about MITs. So MITs is the Multifamily Information Transaction Standard, that mouthful shortened to the word MITs. And actually, MITs has been around since 2001, and I've been working on MITs since 2001.
Wow.
But, yeah, it's like my whole life. But really, MITs was originally made to, all of a sudden everything was moving online. So that last big tech cycle when all of a sudden things went from client server or on your local area network to online. And we had to figure out how to communicate with each other, right? All of a sudden, it isn't just my data, it's the whole client's data that has to transmit data to, say, a screening provider or a payments provider, whatever those cases were. So that's why MITS was created. It's still very heavily used by pretty much all the service providers out there in our industry. And a little over a year ago, with this new fee transparency stuff, the old standard really took care of parking, storage, and pets. It didn't have all of these fees, so the service providers had to write separate solutions for all those fees to present them, right? So now we updated MITS to a new 5.0 data model, and it included everything you could need to transmit any kind of fee, no matter how complex the fee structure is, so that it can be presented to consumers, prospective residents, consistently across any platform. The goal and the vision is that that's your web pages, any service provider you work with, any ILS, right down to a lease doc and even a resident ledger. So there's this consistency of the presentation of this data.
Nice.
Which is a great experience for the resident. I think really good for our industry, to get rid of some of that onus, that comes with being a landlord, as the old tenant and landlords laws, right? So we've done a lot of great work, and we were really thoughtful about how we approached it. Obviously, these systems have been around now 20 some years, like me, and people have a lot of data in their data warehouses. So how do you change something fundamental, deep down in the database without rocking the ship and a really long tail to adopt? Because I've got to change my data warehouse. I've got to change my year-over-year comparisons now because the data changed. So we're really thoughtful about that, and really owner-operators using property management systems don't fundamentally have to change any of that core functionality. The new data model takes care of that for them. And also to help with that, we built a mapping tool. So, the owner operators really, and most of them are very well aware of these legislations in place and pending. So they're taking a good look at that data. But it kind of all does come back to data, Shelley.
It does.
So that's where I'd say we are again with the new technology, as Kevin gave his 3 opinions. Mine is really all about data. So all 3 of mine are data. You really need to take a look at your data. You need to put some governance in place. You need consistency in all that you're doing with that data, right down to the leasing agent, the maintenance tech, people need to understand data and that impact up the chain and what it can impact if you're putting in the wrong data. So I think most of these new technologies that we're seeing come out are going to be dependent on good, clean data.
You are really hitting it home in probably the last 20 conversations I've had across clients and colleagues and friends in the industry is the theme around data and the desire for consistent ways of interpreting it, because it's even different. Even the way the data is even structured or compressed or calculated across platforms is different. So people are really honed in on that. I think AI can't work at its best without good, clean data either.
Right.
And then your theme that you're talking about on this fee transparency, that's also coming up in all of conversations. So I feel like y'all are right on the pulse of what. That's the name of the podcast, but
Well played. Well
you
played.
both literally are on the pulse, RETC, of those themes, and they are not simple to untangle. So I love that you've got a mapping model. What great tools! Is that mapping model something that people can reach out to you about through
Sure.
RETC?
It's published on our RETC.org website under the MITS page. There's a link to it. It's free to use, very simple to use. You simply run a report out of your software, you drag it over to the tool, and it will help you map. First, it'll give you awareness of all your charge or transaction. Blah, that's a word. Take two. Charge or transaction codes so that you can, start to get insight of why do I need this special pet fee only in Minnesota or whatever these crazy transaction codes that have been built up through the years. So it'll easily bring insight to that and then help you map them to these kind of consistent, we call them charge classifications in the MITS data model. And that's what the suppliers will begin to use, this charge classification.
Nice. That's really good work. Any other areas that you want to kind of bring forward that RETC is working on in governance policy at Proptech?
Yeah, I mean, I think just some early conversations we've had, I think obviously much of this, and I think it goes to the heart of why RETC was ultimately spun out as a new organization with dedicated resources over time, more staff and bandwidth to really dedicate to industry need. I think Lori's work on MITS is a testament to, I think the industry's broader commitment to the public, right? And I think it's a acknowledgement, especially on MITS, which is open, right? We want that to be open source. We want tools like the implementation tool to be readily available to housing providers of all types and all stripes, right? Like regardless of how or where they operate. Because the reality is rental housing is messy. We are so fragmented that, there's no one silver bullet, no one software solution for us. So the MITS work, I think, is a good and clear demonstration of where RETC wants to go in the long term. I think I've touched on it, but I think it's worthy of mentioning again, the advocacy work we do. While like NMHC, we are federally facing, we're going to be working with industry partners like the National Apartment Association, their affiliates across the nation, and then obviously our members on the ground to make sure that our members and our industry is well represented in policy discussions at the local and state and federal levels. The reality is that while, again, we're federally facing predominantly, much of the technology policy debate and activity has really shifted over to the state and local environment, whether it's fee transparency, whether it's artificial intelligence policy in so many areas, or, the shining example that's been here for a better part of a decade or more is really data security and privacy. Those standards that really took traction and a foothold in California, and we're seeing continue to spread. And I think we whether it's on housing, the bread and butter housing policy issues, or it's where technology is starting to dominate the conversation. Rental housing providers and their tech partners need to show up, because too often we're not in the room where these policies are being made. And so RETC is really looking to push out, resources onto the ground to make sure that our perspective is heard, and that, the industry collectively is protected. So a lot of really great stuff still coming on the advocacy front. And I think as we, look to build out RETC further, a big piece of that is going to be the community. And you've heard me mention this word again, but that too is RETC's commitment to the broader industry. This is, as we would argue, an all hands on deck moment. Never before has housing been so front and center, but technology also, both the risk and the opportunity presented by it. So we need diverse stakeholders at the table, raising their hands, pitching in, helping inform not just the debate, but also the operations that are, really, whether or not it seems like it, ultimately impacting the way renters live in our communities. And so community will build off of NMHC's existing tech and innovation committees, where we already are in the midst of launching a number of great peer-to-peer groups, and we'll continue to build those out over the next year, ultimately to drive to not just collaboration and peer exchange, but industry product like the MITS data model. Really push forward on solutions. We're spending a lot of time with our tech committees since our most recent tech summit in April, talking about due diligence questionnaires and checklists, and making sure that we're all starting from a good common point as we enter into these relationships, making sure that, data security is taken seriously, making sure that, all of these I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Yeah, that's really, really critical. And two things kind of come to mind as benefits. I think about all the times when I was an operator and you would find out about these changes legislatively kind of at the last minute. So being involved with RETC, you can really get on the forefront proactively and even choose to adopt things proactively if you really feel like it's coming, rather than this kind of last minute scramble to change the way that you do business. And then the second thing that comes to mind is if you're a Proptech company entering into the multifamily space, and several clients that I know of are pivoting from kind of adjacent industries into multifamily, it'd be very important to get involved so that you have an understanding of the policy landscape. And it is, you said this as well, it's not a simple industry. It is a complex industry with a lot of requirements. So those are the things that came to mind based on what you're saying.
I call it the most simple, complex industry out there. It just really is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about not just the regulatory or legislative landscape, but then you look at the way, even in traditional 5+ multifamily, the way we are financed, right? We have such a diverse stack of, it could be, subsidy, it could be, the different types of investments coming in, all with different requirements. And I think that's gotten even more convoluted over the past decade. So it's really just an incredible industry where, you're always learning, you're always moving, and you have to stay ahead of things as best you can.
You absolutely do. It's important work, and I really appreciate you sharing. Do you see, I guess kind of on the same topic, do you see work changing in the way that multifamily works in the next 5 years in relation to kind of RETC and what you're seeing in your policy and impact?
Another cycle
Yeah.
that I'm seeing repeat again. So
Yeah.
we moved everything to the sites. Now we're moving it back. And
Totally.
isn't it crazy? But, I think there are a lot of opportunities with the technology to make work change at the property level.
Yeah.
And then, at the corporate or home office or regional, wherever that moves to. I see it as, great opportunities with real career paths that were, not so clear in the past. So
Yeah.
I see those changes. I'm sure Kevin sees others, but having worked on that side.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, like coming more from the trade association perspective and more of a global perspective on tech, what I would say is, this fear when you talk to folks in the public or in policy circles or the media about artificial intelligence or the future of tech, is it going to displace jobs? Is it going to, shift the economy to a completely different model? I think in some cases that is going to happen. I don't think that we in particular at Multifamily are going to see a total dehumanization of our experience, right? Multifamily at its core is about family. It's about a living experience. It's about putting roofs over people's heads. And I think to do that, even if you techify every single aspect of that living experience, you still need a human touch at some point, somewhere along the pipeline, right? Yeah. And so I do think tech is proving to be a huge game changer in addressing labor shortages. I think in maintenance, all the things that Lori said, I think are absolutely right and proving to be huge wins for us. But I think at the end of the day, when you're making a monumental life decision, whether to live somewhere or not, or, live in this community or not, you do want to see at some point the human side of that operation or that human side of that lease transaction. So, I take that as comfort that in the long term, we're still on the same course. It's just the tools that we're bringing to the table really are what's changing.
I love that. And I think, it is the perfect time the technology is there. Can we make it simple enough, and can we not disrupt the service experience and serve people the way that they want to be served? So
that's right.
I think it takes the drudgery away, Shelley. Some of the drudgery of the jobs and creating reports and sending them and this on Monday mornings. Everybody at the property hated Monday mornings. I think automating some of that and let people do what they're good at is good for everybody, especially the residents. So I really think tech is going to help there a lot.
I think when I got into this industry, I felt like I had the time to serve when I was on site. It's been a long time ago. And I think the job over the years got really complicated with tech. Yeah. I think that was just part of the evolution. So I do love hearing hope in that simplification and technology making the jobs easier to free up that value service time again, rather than someone who's out delivering packages all day or trying to log into 20 different
creating POs.
Exactly, those things. all of those covers.
We all needed that.
Yeah. Focusing on strategy more than tactical as well if you're in leadership. So those are good things. Any Proptech trends that you all see kind of coming, or anything that you think is overhyped right now?
Lori, I want to hear what you're saying.
So I spent a lot of time in the telecom world, actually, ever since the Telecom Act got passed and developers realized they had to pay for the cables in their building. I have watched that evolve. I'm very psyched about managed Wi-Fi. I think it's finally what we need. And just all the challenges we had with cell phone signal and everything. It just solves so many issues as well and enables so many technologies that I think will make living in multifamily, a much better experience. So I'm really, really psyched about that. And that's my opinion.
That's great. I think I come at it, I think, from an angle that says more on there's the cool, sexy part of Proptech, right? The bells and whistles of like the consumer facing piece. And we all love those as well, right? Those are value add. But I think at the backbone of multifamily, there's so much cool stuff happening that folks don't see, right? That's inside the walls, behind, and I think on the resiliency or sustainability side of where we're going, whether it's investor demanded, whether it's coming from the regulatory side, or just because even in some markets, our residents are increasingly wanting to see more of a green posture. I think some of that predictive maintenance, the, leak detection, all of these like cool, climate tech areas provide us a lot of runway. And I think that's going to overall bring down cost. and which hopefully frees capital to flow to new investments and add to the housing supply. So I think it's just that it's a bigger piece of Proptech has been a big piece of the solution to drive us forward. And I think that's where I'm most excited.
I think those are great insights. Completely aligned with that. I think this conversation's been excellent today. And I know, we told our listeners to kind of hang out until the end with some announcements from you all. Is this a good time to chat about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So we're really excited. Obviously, we've talked quite a bit here today about where why RETC was started, where we're going, and really the vision and work that we're building out. And I think, with Lori helping shape the early business plan and really working with in collaboration with so many different partners on the housing side, housing provider side, tech partner side, we really saw that, like RETC, like NMHC, Proptech, our marquee flagship event, also needed to modernize. It needed to shift to meet the moment.
Yeah.
And to do that, we again see this as an all hands on deck moment across the real estate tech ecosystem. And we believe that RETC, as Proptech moves to the RETC ecosystem under our new umbrella, we have now for 2025 made the decision to shift RETC's Proptech to a member only event. And that really, I think, is something that protects the broader industry, protects the ecosystem, and puts Proptech and RETC on a sustainable path forward so that we can continue to serve the industry at such a critical moment.
Oh, that's a big announcement. And then on that, note, if people aren't members yet, what is the best way for them to kind of start to get involved and become part of RETC?
Yeah, so I think easiest is RETC.org, RETTC.org. We are readily available. Lori, myself, we have a great team around us that can easily walk you through the membership options. And I want to stress that we have been really intentional about protecting pathways and for startups, innovators, housing providers of all types and sizes, nonprofits, academics. You pick a path. We have been intentional about protecting a lane for those folks to still benefit from Proptech and to get into RETC. So we don't want this to be a barrier. We want this to be an opportunity for us all to collectively hold hands and raise the boat.
Oh, I love it. That's a great conversation today. Really timely. Appreciate you both for taking the time out to talk with me today. And we'll be sure to link to you in the episode as well, so everybody can get in touch with you on LinkedIn and the other areas as well. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Shelley. Thanks for having us.
And that wraps up another episode of Proptech Pulse. I hope this conversation has given you valuable insights and perhaps even sparked some ideas for your own Proptech journey. Remember, the future of multifamily is being written right now with every technological advance and innovative solution. So stay curious, stay connected, and keep your finger on the pulse of Proptech. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Proptech Pulse on your favorite podcast platform and share this along with your colleagues. You can also find us on social media for bite-sized insights and updates. I'm Shelley Robinson, and until next time, let's keep innovating, disrupting, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in PropTech and multifamily. Let's build it together.